Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 2 and I will expand this presentation. Chomsky say linguistic theory is concerned primarily with an ideal speaker-listener in a completely homogeneous speech community who know its language perfectly. Weyonrach, Lebov, and Herzog say all change necessarily involves heterogeneity and variation. Such a view of language clearly rules out any possible study of language change, simply because it leaves no possibility for change to happen. Language is always changing and adapting to the needs of its users. Language changes across space, social group, and varies across time. Given its crucial nature, historical linguists have been concerned why do language change over the last two centuries. Answers provided are sometimes quite fanciful, and discussion of the cause of language change often start with a list of imaginative theories. The most popular being breathing efforts in mountain environment as a possible cause for the first sound shift in Germanic. Even without reviewing such proposal, current theories of causations in language change are quite disparate, and depending on the perspective from which they are seen, may also look rather unlikely. Ultimately, one's view on the causes of change are inextricably connected with one's general assumption on language and on the real object of linguistic research. Apparently commonplace observation that language display a wide object a wide margin of synchronic variation. As controversial as this statement may sound, it cannot help us much if we assume.
Of language change, social practice language may not only change toward features that have more social practice but also away from ones with negative practice, as in the case of the loss of in British rigid pronunciation action, such movement can go back and forth. Imperfect learning. According to one view, children regularly learn the adult form imperfectly and the change from the then thrown into a new standard. Alternatively, imperfect learning goes regularly in one part of society, such as an immigrant group. Migration movement speech communities moving into a region with a new or more complex linguistic situation will influence and be influenced by language change. They sometimes even endive with entirely new language such as pidgin and crows.
Next cases is cultural environment. Language structure and environment is a broad introduction to how language are shaped by their environment. It makes the argument that the social, cultural, and natural environment of speaker influence the structure and development of the language they speak. As a culture evolves, new places, situations, and objects inevitably enter its language. And the last one is economy. Speech communities tend to change their utterance to be as efficient and effective as possible while reaching communicative goals. The result of the economic power of countries like the US and China has a direct correlation with the extinctions of minor language. In fact, experts say that the more economically successful a nation is, the faster its language are lost.
My name is Tafela Soudal Samabruka, and I'll explain about articulatory simplification. Most sounds have a physiological basis. Many changes in the phonology of a language are motivated by the physiological goal of enhancing ease of articulation. If a sequence of sounds in a language is difficult to pronounce or it is unnecessarily complex, it is likely to be simplified. Articulator simplification is a reduction in the effort of pronunciation. With the loss of the phoneme in many positions, many consonant clusters arose. These clusters were in many cases simplified by assimilation. For example 1, deletion of a consonant. Word fifth pronounced as fifths. And example 2, insertion of a vowel. Word athlete pronounced as athlete. This assimilation was regressive. The first member of the consonant cluster become more like the second sound. In this case, the first sounds become devoiced and palatalized. The diacritic indicates palatalization and more like the second sounds, making these words are easier to pronounce.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Iktifa Aulia Khair and I'm from class C. And in this occasion, I will continue the discussion that was previously discussed by my friend. Analogy is the similarity or conformity between two different objects or things. In linguistics, analogy is the result of the formation of language elements due to the influence of other patterns in language. An example is the formation of neonization constructions. There are already existing patterns in mechanization constructions. Analogy is also includes reasoning that come from one particular thing to another similar thing, and then concludes what is true for one thing will also be true for another. The analogy doesn't only show the similarity of the two different things, but conclusion will be drawn on the basic similarity. Thus, the analogy can be used as an explanation or as part of reasoning. Conclusion drawn from an analogy can convey or compare certain facts with other specific facts. This thinking is also commonly called thinking through equations or thinking through analogies, or what is called logical analogy. Analogy of language change is the reflect the preference of speakers for regular patterns over irregular ones. It can lead to incorrect overgeneralizations such as string or strong, sting or stung, and bring or brung. That's all about analogy, and for the next explanation, will explain by my friend.
Alright, let's start with the seventh slide. In this slide, we will talk about reanalysis. Reanalysis often involves an attempt at breaking down a compound or root of fixed structure that was not originally broken down. It means that we try to understand where and why does a word came to be. Maybe it's because it combination of two words, maybe it's because of things like dialect and so forth. Now, in reanalysis, we can try to make an example of hamburger. Traditionally, a meat patty, which, as you can know it, sometimes being linked with the name of city of Hamburg, but traditionally it just means a meat patty. But not, we understand it as hamburger, as implied by our equivalent of turkey, burger, cheeseburger, etc. It changed the meaning by just taking out the ham because it changed the overall ingredients or the main focus the of, of the words. Now, to make it shorter, reanalysis is an act to break down a words, a compound or a root of fixed structure that was not originally broken down so that we can understand it better. But where did it come from?
Okay, now I will explain about language contact. Occurs when speakers of one language or dialect interact with speakers of another language or dialect. Language contact is usually seen as a result of social factors that enable, encourage, or force speakers of different
different to communicate with one another. Social factors such as cultural, politics, economy, and the others. The idea of language being in contact is part of the linguistic structuralist heritage. The term language contact here is short for contact indicate language change. The problem with the structuralist approach to language contact is that it is explanatory to value is limited. Therefore, modern contact linguistics have moved beyond to the notion in interplaying language system and regard language users as the actual carriers of language contact. The causes of sound change without language contact lie in the general tendency of human cultural products to undergo non-functional stylistic change. Language change is often brought about by contact between speakers of different language or dialects, rather than by variation internal to a given speech community. Contact between populations who speak different languages involves extensive bilingualism. Language change is motivated by both internal and external aspects of language change. The external aspects include genre, borrowing, and language contact. Genre is used to describe groups of texts which seem to have similar language features and to be performing similar social functions. Genre is communicative text indicative what kinds of activities are regarded as important within a society. This means that genre change over time because they reflect a tolerance for such change. The adaptation of lexical material to the morphological and syntactic, and usually phonological pattern of the received language. There are several reasons why English speakers want to borrow a foreign word, and the simplest one is that the word is the name for something new. All changes are ultimately due to contact, which is an arguable position depending on what one means when one speaks of authority. The fact that new varieties of English have developed as closely associated with issues of identity. These new varieties are a factor of cultural and linguistic contact. They reflect individual desire to signal their unique identity while speaking a global language.
Spelling pronunciations. Spelling pronunciations are one symptom of the shift from the oral to the visual bias. In spelling pronunciations, speakers change the sound of a word by bringing it more in line with its spelling. A sample of spelling pronunciations provided by Householder includes the following, all of which have modern pronunciations that are closer to their spelling than were their older traditional pronunciations, like yesterday, Wednesday, diphtheria, diphthong, harass, kiln, fiddles, conch, draft, certain, other, yes, housewife, gold, bomb, jaunt, laundry, and sewer. Though underestimated, spelling pronunciation is an important and respectable factor in language change. In many cases, like Householder, offering examples from larger groups, and in more general terms, suggest that spelling pronunciation has restrained palatalization in rare or literary words, and has helped keep alive the insistence on the HW pronunciation of WH words like well and which. It seemed like that something like spelling pronunciation was part of the process that led to the leveling of dialect differences in late middle and early modern English. The most obvious effect of spelling pronunciations is to bring the sound of words into line with the predominant sound to spelling correspondences, thus simplifying and regularizing these correspondences even more. Spelling pronunciations are more typical of American English than British English.